Edward Pearce, not here. Josie Schroeder.
Good afternoon, tēnā koutou. My name is Josie. I'm here on behalf of the YMCA, which happens to own a large camp in Wainui. 240 beds essentially, and about 70,000 bed nights per year. So we are the biggest sewerage creator in Wainui. And that's why I'm here. I'm also want to clarify that I have worked and lived in Wainui for 8 years myself, so I know the environment extremely well, and my husband ran the salmon farm that was mentioned earlier for 20 years. So I'm not just a sort of a figurehead from the town talking on behalf of a rural community that hasn't been a big part of my life. People before me have talked about the environmental issue, so I'm not going to go on about that. I think you've heard about that. There's also been some talk around the fact that we've been promised and promised and promised and not got and not got and not got. So there's huge frustration around that, but I don't need to go over that either. The YMCA has chosen the option of continuing, as have most of the submitters, and I understand from, obviously the YMCA has had a lot of relationship with the community one way or another, and as the previous camp manager, I know a lot of the people who live in Wainui. And in general, there's sort of two schools of thought. There's a school of thought that says, crikey, if we get a big sewage system, town system, we're going to open the floodgates for developers to come in and they're going to completely change Wainui, and there's going to be, you know, bulldozers and batch owners, and it's going to turn into Akaroa. And there's plenty of people who live in Wainui who do not want that. And really the camp's kind of in that camp, if I'm honest. In the camp, that's a good pun. Anyway. Then there's the other school of thought, which is actually we want some development and we want some life, and the developers themselves want to create something there. Now, I understand that the council sees Wainui as one of the places in the peninsula that is ripe for development. And I would agree with that. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and it's got a real whole and soul and heart and that sort of thing. But I think the question here is not about whether we progress with a sewage system or we don't progress with a sewage system. The first question before that is around whether or not Wainui is tagged for development in the future. Because frankly, if it isn't, if that's just a big pipe dream that isn't probably going to happen, then what should be being invested in is giving the community in Wainui some really, really clear advice as to investment around their own personal sewage system. So to answer your question you asked earlier, Tim, I think, sure, there's piles of options for people to manage their own sewage, and people do that in rural communities all over this country. So Wainui is no different. The problem is, because we've all been promised and promised and promised the sewage system, we've let sewage systems degrade to the point where, and then everyone's kind of, you know, the financial dilemma that individual homeowners have is really quite massive. Nobody wants to spend $10,000 on a septic system if the following year the council's going to finally do their thing that they said. So what needs to happen is you first of all need to decide whether it's a place for development, and there's a whole quagmire of issues around that. But if that's the case, you need to get on with the sewage system so everybody can, because obviously that means you're going to have to put the sewage system in, you need to get on with it so that people can move forward with their lives and sort it out. And if that isn't likely to happen in the next, say, 10 or 15 years, then I think you just need to say that and say there will not be a town sewage system for this length of time, and I would suggest a septic system lasts 10 to 20 years, I understand, then it's actually not for 10 or 20 years. So everyone can also move on with their lives in that sense and sort their own sewage system out. That will upset the developers. But for the record, it won't actually really upset the camp. For the community, I think the best thing is to put in the system. We're right for it, we're ready for it, we've got our head around it and all of that sort of thing. For the camp, however, we have actually, contrary to some beliefs, we've actually got a really good system. We've invested about $200,000 in the system in the last few years. It's working well. It is inspected by ECAN every single year. It passes its inspection every single year, and we have resource consent until 2029. So there's no desperate disaster for the YMCA if we don't put this in. But for the community, it is really, really important that it goes in. I think I'm running out of time.
Yeah. Pauline?
Thanks for your submission. The land you have there, because I must say I haven't been to Wainui, I'm sorry, most of my kids have. Do you have a lot of land for your system? Because our team's often suggested that people take ownership of their own systems, and we've been told that the land is too steep. Have you got different land, or you must have way more land that you can actually run a whole septic system on?
Well, obviously we're not a little section. So you've got to imagine there's a whole lot of batch owners with little sections. They don't have anywhere to distribute their sewage or their wastewater.
Yep.
We have 13 hectares.
Yep, so that's the issue.
And a plantation specifically built to deal with we have our own settling pond, for goodness sake. I mean, we're a little town, our camp.
Just establishing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noted your comments about the way that the discussion document was presented, so I'll go back and reflect on that. So
Yeah, I've had my apology, so that's fine.
Oh, that's good.
We've moved on from that.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I think you're back as the YMCA now.
Oh, no, that was it. To clarify that, I think that's probably just an error.